Coming up on this episode of the Curt Said Podcast, I recap what took place at the joint practices between the Lions and Giants. I also take a look at how Teddy Bridgewater will upgrade the Lions' backup quarterback position. Buckle up, Buttercup. It's time to start the show. What up, though? And welcome to the Curt Said Podcast, your trusted source for Detroit Lions news and rumors. I'm your host, Curt Steele. If you're new to the channel, thank you for stopping by. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with fellow Lions fans just like yourself. Follow me on your favorite social media platforms and visit curtsteele.com. Today is Thursday, August 10th, 2023, and shout out to my family over at Lions Nation Unite. Now let's get after it. First of all, let's talk about who missed the joint practices with injuries. Frank Ragnow, well, he wasn't injured. His wife's having a baby. Jonah Jackson mixed practice with a finger. Craig Reynolds was undisclosed, and so it was tight end Daryl Daniels. Trinity Benson was out with a leg injury, and they missed. All those guys missed both joint practices. Now, Denzel Mims missed Tuesday's practice, but returned to the field on Wednesday. But unfortunately, the brother got hurt, man, and aggravated his the injury again and left practice early, didn't come back. Well, that's your injury update for August the 10th, 2023. Let's get into what happened out there on the field for the joint practices. Day one really belonged to the Detroit Lions and the offense, man. They were out there killing it. Jared Goff and the offense, man, were effective in team and individual drills. However, we'll get to it in a minute. Well, day two belonged to the Giants. So they got their lick back. And they controlled most of the matchups on day two. But if you look at it, great solid days of work on both days by both teams. But let's look at who kind of stood out. On the offense for the Lions against New York, yeah, I know who it is, man. Amon-Ra St. Brown continues his dominant performance. It don't matter who in what and whatever is lined up against that dude, man. He is killing it. Y'all know what I say. He's him. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. The little fella, Khalif Raymond, was out there shaking people out of their shoes. I mean, he's really defined his route running. I like what Khalif Raymond is bringing to the Lions this year. And veteran wide receiver Marvin Jones, man, making those contested catches. He doing what Marv does. It's just like he was back when he was here the first time. He just makes plays. You throw it up to him, the dude's going to come down and catch it. Those guys made the life miserable for the Giants secondary out there. Those veteran wide receivers putting it out there. Now, you got three rookies on the offense that really stood out. Of course, Dan Campbell has talked about this guy. Undrafted free agent wide receiver Dylan Drummond continues to have an excellent training camp. They got a lot of UDFAs making some noise on the Lions this year, so look out for Dylan Drummond, man. He's making a push. So, I don't know. Antoine Green, you on notice, brother. You may not make this roster because Dylan Drummond's coming for that spot. Tight end Alan Porter is really doing his thing. He is proven to be the number one tight end on the Lions and showing why he was drafted that high. But the biggest standout was the first pick by the Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs. His speed, elusiveness, and receiving ability out of the backfield was on full display, and he frustrated the Giants defense on both days. He's just really doing his thing. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be exciting. He's going to have a really good season for the Lions. But, I mean, he was torching. I mean, there's one highlight out there. I think I got it on the screen right here, where he really just torched one of the Giants linebackers in coverage, and it wasn't even close. I mean, what can you say, man? Look at it. Here it is again. The dude is doing his thing. All right. Not really much to talk about on the offensive line. They had a lot of guys coming in and out due to the injuries of guys not playing. But one guy who definitely stands out is my man, Penei. You know how I say it country. Penei Sewell. Man, look at this highlight where he is just absolutely stonewalling his Oregon teammate, Kayvon Thibodeau. Tibbs was kind of absent. Didn't really hear a lot from this guy, and I'm glad that we did not pick him. I'm glad we picked Aiden Hutchinson because Thibodeau is not getting it done, man. Well, at least against Penei Sewell. And Sewell has struggled some with Aiden Hutchinson, but they got kind of go back and forth, but they hold each other down. Sewell is just like, man, you ain't getting back here, man. So get up out of here in the one-on-one drills, man. But shout out to my man, Penei Sewell and the offensive line. They're doing their things. Players that kind of flash were the running backs. If you look at all these guys kind of had multiple big plays, at different points. David Montgomery, Jameer Jefferson, Justin Jackson were definitely doing their thing. Now, the run game for the Lions was not as effective as the pass, probably because of the majority of the snaps for the O-line during the joint practices were by backup players, and they're, you shifting them in and out, and there's not a lot of continuity doing that. So, but when they get that actually, starting offensive line together on the field at the same time, I have no problem that the running game will be effective for the Detroit Lions. Now let's look at the defense, because you got to talk about the defense, man, because there's so much focus on the defense because of how bad it was last year on defense, man. Y'all know who it is. Big Hutch, man. Aiden Hutchinson continues his dominance. He got to the Giants quarterback on both days, just blowing up people, spin moves, swim moves. I mean, he's doing his thing. He shows how he really improved his pass rushing techniques, and his strength during the offseason was on full display against the Giants. Derek Barnes and Alex Anzalone continued their really solid and play on the first teams. Derek Barnes he got a chokehold on that middle linebacker position right now. And he's allowed Alex Anzalone, and he mentioned it the other day in his presser or media availability after the practice the other day, that he is back to playing that wheel linebacker, which is more suited to his skill set. And Derek Barnes is like, I got you, man. So he's holding Malcolm Rodriguez and Jack Campbell at bay right now for that starting position at the middle linebacker. And speaking of those two, they flashed as well. Malcolm Rodriguez had a nice play in coverage the other day, and Jack Campbell's playing solid, but they've been a little inconsistent on both the days of doing joint practices. But I think it's kind of what they've been doing all training camp, where they're not really making a push to take that spot from Derek Barnes, but they're playing solid, and growth. That's all Dan Campbell's talking about. Got to see that growth from them. They're growing, but they're not growing as fast as Derek Barnes. So shout out to that young fella from Purdue, man, doing his thing. Derek Barnes has proven that he is going to be the starter right there, right now on that defense. Okay, let's get to the secondary. Brian Branch. Speaking of him, because we talked about my man St. Brown being him on offense. On defense right now, Brian Branch is proving why he should have been drafted on day one of the draft. He's playing with a chip on his shoulder, and he's just a beast no matter where he lines up. He lines up at safety. He lines up at corner. If wherever he's lining up in coverage, in zone, wherever he's lining up, he's a beast. It doesn't matter. Now, Cam Sutton and C.J. Gardner-Johnson continue to be disruptive in the secondary, breaking up passes. And y'all know C.J. Gardner-Johnson go talk that talk, baby. You hear what he said I mean, I was summing up what he said to Amani Warrior. He told him he can't cover jack. Well, thing the word he used. And he said the reason that Amani Warrior was not long in Detroit because he lacked grits. Shout out to C.J. Gardner-Johnson, man. He keep that thing 100. Kirby Joseph looks ready to have a big year in year 2 for the Lions. He's just jumping off the charts. And Dan Campbell said this is he's showing a lot of confidence, and some of that can be contributed with his pairing with C.J. Gardner-Johnson. They've played a lot of safety together, and the communication is definitely better between those two on that back end of the defense. Excuse me. And another young fella, man. I talked about these undrafted free agents. We talked about Dylan Drummond on offense, but on the defense, man, Starling Thomas V. He is going to make this roster. There's no ifs, no ands, no buts about it. It's going to be a Lions veteran that was here last year that's not going to make the roster or going to be delegated to practice squad, because Starling Thomas It's frustrating guys. Doesn't matter what level of competition he's facing. He's just doing his thing. And I like what he is doing and how he is making an impact. And Jerry Jacobs said, it kind of reminds him of him just being a dog out there on the field. He doesn't mentor him, he says, but he just looks out for him and, gives him some those words of encouragement from a veteran on the team. So Starling Thomas the fifth, man, he is going to make this roster. It is going to be hard to keep that guy off of the 53-man roster. Like I said, man, shout out to him. Now, there's one thing that kind of stood out to me as far as the joint practices for the Lions defense, because they didn't have a great day on the second day of practice, but that first day, they held the Giants scoreless. Didn't get a point on the board doing red zone drills during the first day of the joint practices. That's pretty big. The Lions, they didn't have a really good red zone defense last year. So for them to do that to that Giants offense on that first day of practice was good. CJ Gardner-Johnson, we talked about him. He's a communicator. And that was evident on the first day of practice because the secondary was communicating. They got to the right spots on that first day of practice, but they struggled with that on the second day. And that be contributed to how they kind of really mixed up the lineup on Wednesday. But they continue to improve in that back end of the secondary. Cam Sutton was breaking up passes all over the places and making sure that he's in communication with his fellow members of that secondary. So you look at it, I think CJ Gardner-Johnson and Cam Sutton are going to make a big difference on the back end of that defense, along with Brian Branch. This is a totally different secondary. And I like what the new secondary coach, Dre Bly is bringing. You look at what's going on that back end of the defense, the secondary. Dre Bly is an influence back there. Also with those veterans, like I said, it's Gardner Johnson, Cam Sutton. I'd like to see what's going to happen when Emmanuel Mosley returns from injury. So shout out to those guys, those veteran presence. They've made a difference in those all through training camp and especially during the joint practices. Overall, for both teams, like I said, it's a good day of work for both teams for both days. The teams are off today as they get ready for Friday night's preseason game at Ford Field. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop me a comment. For more content from me, head over to curtsteele.com. You will find the links to my articles on Sideline Report and yardbarker.com right there on the homepage. Follow me on your favorite social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You can find the links to those my profiles on those platforms on the homepage of curtsteele.com as well. And you can find the link to get yourself some Curt Steele gear. You see this that boss up, ball out shirt right there on the homepage. It takes you to the link to the Curt Steele gear, in the LNU shop. So head over to that link and get yourself some Curt Steele gear, man. Y'all know what the logo look like. There it is, man. That Regal Lion right there it's popping, man. So grab yourself some Curt Steele gear at the LNU shop. All right, let's get into this Teddy Bridgewater sign out. I talked about it in the minute hang with Curt the other day about the Lions announcing, we're kind of coming out that he's going to be coming into town. Dan Campbell talked about him coming in. He's not going to be in this week or maybe toward the end of the week, but he won't practice or see any kind of action on the field until next week. But let's be totally clear on what Teddy Bridgewater's role is going to be on this offense. It's going to be the backup to Jared Goff. Bridgewater is not coming in to have competition with Jared Goff. He's there to push the two guys, really the one guy that's still on the roster, and that's Nate Sudfeld, who has had some struggles. It's not a secret that he's had some struggles, interceptions. He struggled during the joint practices, and he struggled at times during just the regular training camp sessions. So he's had some flashes, but it's not to the level where it's consistent. But Bridgewater and the Lions, they've shared some mutual interest, since the spring, and it's finally coming to fruition here shortly. But let's kind of look at what the Lions backup quarterback position looks like right now before Teddy Bridgewater officially signs his contract. Nate Sudfeld got the backup job last year. Sudfeld has been in the NFL since 2017, and he's appeared in 6 games, completing 25 of 37 passes with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. The other only quarterbacks on the roster is 2023 third-round pick Hendon Hooker, who is currently on the active non-football injury list with that ACL injury he suffered at Tennessee. And he will miss most of the season. I was just thinking, I don't see him having a big role on the team this year. And the other quarterback is undrafted free agent Adrian Martinez. Man, Martinez isn't going to even make the roster. I mean, he's a guy who's going to be maybe a practice squad guy. So if you look at the backup quarterback position, you got Nate Sudfeld, who has 37 career passes, and you got 2 rookies. Enter my man, Teddy Two Gloves. Now, he brings an experience of 65 career starts. He's got 15,000 career passing yards, 75 touchdowns, 47 interceptions, and he's the first Lions backup quarterback with any substantial playing time since Dante Culpepper back in 2008 and 2009. Now, Dan Campbell he's familiar with Teddy Bridgewater because he was the tight ends coach in New Orleans when Bridgewater played 2 seasons for the Saints, from 2018 and 2019. Now, in this Tuesday press conference, he talked about how Teddy Bridgewater would mentor the wide receivers down in New Orleans State, and he would teach them how to run their routes effectively and how to read coverages. Just like, hey, you run the route like this, and you maybe need to do it this way, because to get them the most out of your route concepts. Or, if the defense is lined up like this, this is what the coverage is. So you may want to run the route differently. That just overall mentorship of the young wide receiver corps down there in New Orleans. He said on the day before the game, he would take the wide receivers and go over the whole entire game plan before the game. And I like what that does, because Bridgewater's veteran leadership is an instant upgrade and brings that credibility to the Lions quarterback room that we haven't had in a long time. If you look at recently with Tim Boyle and David Blau, you just didn't have a lot of experience. And then you bring in a guy like Nate Sudfeld, who has very limited experience in the backup quarterback position. And if you have a guy, and now Jared Goff is a very doable quarterback, if he goes down, you have a guy in place that is a proven starter in the league, and he could definitely win you some games. Because I feel if Dave Sudfeld goes in for Jared Goff, it's just going to be some losing. And we built the momentum, and we want to have a quarterback that can hold it down for Jared Goff if he goes down. Now, Campbell, I'll say this a little bit ago, he is not in the building yet. So Bridgewater is not there, but he will be in either later this week or early next week, and he will be involved with the joint practices against Jacksonville next week, prior to next week's preseason game versus the Jaguars. To read more content from me on this subject, man, I'm going to post a link to the article I put on yardbarker.com about what Teddy Bridgewater brings to the backup quarterback position in Detroit. It's time for Dessert with Curt. Sweet bits of news and notes about the Detroit Lions. And today, if you haven't heard, I don't know where you've been on a rock, but the Detroit Lions will unveil a statue of team legend Barry Sanders in a private ceremony just before the home opener in the week 2 matchup versus the Seattle Seahawks. Sanders is the only player in franchise history to have a statue made in his honor by the team. I mean, he deserves it, man. Barry Sanders is a NFL legend, and you just think he's fourth all time in rushing yards, and he retired early. So you never know what would have happened if he would have played some more years for the Lions or in the NFL. But that is just a great honor for that young fella, man. With the young fella, this is a great honor for Barry Sanders to get that statue, man. And shout out to the team for doing it, man. And that is your dessert with Curt for 10 August 2023. Thanks for joining me today for today's episode of the Curt Still Podcast, your trusted source for Detroit Lions news and rumors. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop me a comment. I will get back to you as soon as I can. For more content from your man Curt Still, head over to curtstill.com. You can find the links to my articles on Sideline Report and yardbarker.com right there on the homepage. Do your man Curt Still a favor. Whatever you do in life, you got to boss up, ball out, and be the best version of you that you can be. This is Curt Still, and I will holla at you real soon.